Well, hey, Alain Picard here. Welcome to the studio, and today we're going to talk about the color green. A wise Kermit the Frog once said, "It's not easy being green." Can you relate to that when we paint those landscapes? One of you asked me this. You said, "Where I live, every growing thing is green." It's too much. I don't know how to handle all that green. Can you relate to that? I certainly can. Well, this landscape video is all about that, giving you some strategies so you can handle all that green. Does that sound interesting to you? Let's get right into it. Okay, so I'm going to take you all the way to the other side of the world for this landscape demonstration to Cambodia, where there's a young rice paddy, like it's young rice. Think about spring greens, very young greens. It's basically grass and it's very green grass. So you can relate to that, I'm sure. It's that time of year here in the Northeast. So you can see my reference photograph off on the right, and of course lots of green. And this is going to lead us into the first strategy in dealing with greens. What I love to do as a strategy in dealing with all that green is to lay a complementary underpainting under the green. So I'm going to use reds under the greens. They can be rusty, earthy reds. They could be more orangey, golden sienna reds. They can be more crimson, purpley reds. That's on you, whatever your little heart desires. But if you get that complementary color under the green, it's going to break it up. It's going to give you some unique stimulus for the eye, activation for the eye. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to sketch in my composition, which I've laid out here in a little thumbnail. I've laid out an 8x10 format composition for my young rice paddy. And then I'm just going to sketch that in with hard pastel and go right in with an underpainting. Okay, so I'm going to start by looking for my basic shape format in my compositional sketch and applying that to my sanded board here. So I'm going to separate that horizon line with a simple line. And I'm using a new pastel, a hard pastel in a reddish violet family to sketch with. There's that. We've got a little, right in front of the horizon, I've got a little kind of layer of trees that is very important to the composition. It provides another layer of depth. So I want to make sure I've got that location just right. Now I'm doing an 8x10 composition. So what that means is a little bit of a higher rectangle than my reference photograph. So I just need to make sure I get that right. And so basically I'm just gonna group these clusters of trees with a simple abstract shape mass before we get into the painting. I'm looking for that basic shape structure of the dark value masses. Never quite looks right at the first pass, but you just shift and adjust as you develop the piece. And that further away receding layer, that's going to be important for us in dealing with greens, because I'm going to be able to bring in cools and neutrals, a whole different color palette. And then some breakup right in between these trees here. Now we just want to get the sense of space with the water lines on the composition. Let's just take the location points right off my thumbnail. You'll notice I'm looking a lot to my thumbnail instead of the reference, because I want to trust that my design is correct. I don't want to just copy the photograph. Bring this up with the nice little canal of water irrigating the rice paddy, receding in space. And then I thought it would be nice, even though I didn't see it in my reference, I thought it would be nice to add a little more water on the left side of the picture plane, just as if there was another little shot through there, just for visual interest. So there we go. We've got basically this composition laid in. Let me just make sure that I'm comfortable with it. One more line representing some dark value shadowing in the grasses, which are going to be the source of our conversation here, those greens. Okay, so we're just about ready for strategy number one, which is use reds under the greens. Just playing with my line of shadow and light here on the water. Good. So the next step is to add some dry pigment in, and I'm going to go right in with darker reds in the shadow side and lighter orangey reds. I'm going to go to that orangey side. I can see some of that in the painting. So I'm going to get a nice rusty red. I pre-selected a few here, clean it up a bit, and just start to lay that in on the shadow side. Nice rich dark red. And I'm using the soft pastel right away. Some like to underpaint with hard pastel, totally appropriate, but I just go right to the soft pastels. I like the rich pigmentation. One consideration when you're using them is not to overwhelm the surface, because the soft pastel a little goes a long way. I'm going to go into a lighter value red in the orangey pink family. Just gets a real nice orangey pink in there as well. Up into that mid-zone, wonderful rich color. Throw a little bit of that up into this tree formation. Now you'll notice in my reference you don't see a bunch of pink and red in the trees, but I'm putting that warmth and into the painting early so that I can work the greens on top of it. I'm shifting to the orange side of red on the really light grass that's in the really well lit area of the painting. Throw a little orange on there, maybe a little more orange in the tree as well. Let's see. That's probably okay already. Maybe just a little more of my crimson red in these trees. Make sure I have enough to move it around. Now the beauty of pastel is that it's an opaque medium, so you can lay lights on top of your underpainting later. That's not an issue. All right, I'm ready to use alcohol. I'm using an isopropyl alcohol at 70% to wash in. And I'm getting a little golden Taclon brush ready to wash in. I'm realizing I did not do one thing. Let me do that for you now. I'm going to put some really light red in the sky in the form of pink. There we go. And into the water. Good. Okay, so I'll start with that pink in the sky. I usually, if I have lighter and darker colors in my underpainting, I try to start with the lightest ones first. Now I didn't put a lot of red in where there's a bluish gray receding horizon on the horizon line, so I probably should just wash some tone over that so we don't have white peeking through the painting in our underpainting stage. But I love putting that red under the subsequent green layer. Very effective strategy in dealing with those greens. All right, let's just kind of put something on that horizon for now, just so it's not white. Maybe just even a little soft brushwork between the sky and the trees. I never like to see that little bit of white popping through. Okay, let's come down into the really nice rusty red. I'll do a little vertical texture because that young rice grows vertically. So we'll just even now begin to mimic some of the shape patterns. This has to get a lot darker up in the trees, but we'll deal with that. And we'll get right into this shadow side. Oh, here on the right side, we've got the shadows that are cast by some other trees that we cannot see. And I just love these underpaintings. It's like the joy of painting brought back into soft pastel. Some beautiful textural effects of the brush. To play with that edge of the brush just to create some grassy effects toward the water. I kind of lost my location on the water. We'll pull it back out. Okay, as we go into the massing in stage and dealing with our greens, we're going to get right into addressing the various pastel colors. So I've pre-selected a palette before I started, which goes from my underpaintings, the reds and the warms, all the way through to some sky paintings. So the next strategy is really to vary your warm and cool colors in the greens. We want to be using some of those yellows and really warm side of the green family, the yellow ochre in the earthy side, the greens with yellows in them, and then towards the cool side as well, those blue greens and Prussians, and then right into the blue family. So varying the temperature of your greens is our next strategy. And you might be wondering, what are the best pastels to use when you're painting greens? Well, I've got some great resources for you. What pastels should I use? What pastel papers should I use? Those are two great videos to help you out. Those links are in the description below. So if you haven't seen those videos, they're going to be really helpful to you. You're going to want to link in the description below and check those out as well. And of course, like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, as we continue to create this green landscape. Here we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is work into the darks. And I usually start with not quite all the way dark, but pretty dark. I've got some nice deep reds. So I'm going to go in and start with green here on my dark shapes. And right away, we're going to put green over that red. And it's going to be very interesting because it's not just a bunch of greens by themselves. We've got all this wonderful warmth underneath it. Now, mimicking my design shape again. Underpaintings, you always lose a bunch of your drawing. So you got to restate it a little bit. Now, I don't want to cover all my burgundies and reds and stuff. I want to let it peek through. Find a nice balance of how much of that can show through in the painting. That's a nice middle dark green, and now I'm going to shift into an earthier gray or green. I'm just going to out my third strategy right away so we can talk about it. In addition to varying the temperature of your greens, you want to vary the chroma or the saturation. So you want to move from more vibrant colors to less vibrant, to more neutrals. And the green I just picked up is much more muted, much less vibrant than the previous. And that's a good thing. We want to have degrees of vibrancy. You actually want you don't want too many vibrant greens. You want a mixture of neutrals and semi-neutrals. You want to vary that chroma, vary that saturation. So as you might be hearing, you want to create a lot of variety in your greens. Let's get up into the trees and begin to mask that in. I'm going to go back to a dark value green and just really mass it in. Even though we're painting a small piece here, 8 by 10, I want to make some nice big bold strokes. Throw a nice strong mark in at the bottom. This painting is intended to be loose and fairly quick, as a demonstration of dealing with greens. So let's just kind of really mass this in. And you can see how that red is working alongside the green to create interest. Let's create a nice smaller tree right in here. Now, I'm a pretty heavy, I'm using a fairly heavy hand right away because I've got that red underneath. Okay, maybe a little bit of that same color down here. I think it's darker. Now to the midtones. Again, same concept. We're going to go into some nice neutral greenish colors in the mid-tone range and just let them sparkle, let the orange and the red sparkle through. Get a little texture, some grassy texture in the foreground. Got to bring my little river back in, irrigation canal back into the grasses again in a moment. Start to get that horizon line back into the painting. I like that color, that helps a lot. I want to open up this foreground with a little more lighter green. Great. Let's go into a bit more yellowy color on the ochre side. So a little earthy yellow ochre. Let that green change in its temperature toward yellow. That's a big help. If all your green looks very one-dimensional, very just Kelly green or very chrome green, it's going to look like AstroTurf, and that's not going to look very natural. So we want to just create different values of green, different shades, different amounts of vibrance. Get this yellow ochre in the back. Now I really need to put some blue gray into the back area just to drop it back. So let's do that. Let's throw a nice blue gray, greenish blue gray in here. I like that right in here too, between the grass and the water. A little blue-green, it's wonderful. Maybe we start to, I jump around paintings a lot. That's kind of the way my eyes work. I let my eye dance around the painting. Let's find that. Go one more layer lighter than that. That's probably too light. Okay. Look at that blue. So this is going to create atmospheric perspective, seeing that blue way back in the horizon. Sneak a little through right there. Okay, we need some sky pretty soon. Okay, I'm going to bring some pink back over the sky just to keep that connection of the color palette. And I'll probably vary the blues as well. Let's bring a little bit deeper aqua blue gray in for our transition between the trees and the sky. So this is, believe it or not, another aspect of dealing with greens. We have these green trees at the horizon of the landscape, and they transition to the sky, and I'm using a more neutral blue-gray in between the green of the tree and the lighter value of the sky, and that creates a nice additional value that is stepped between the trees and the sky. Just another piece of the diversity that is being created in the color palette. This is a small piece, nice, bold, almost at times abstracted mark-making techniques. Nice neutral blue grays. Let's bring a little bit of those into the water. I try to keep one eye on my thumbnail, on my compositional study, just to make sure I'm moving in a way that agrees with my vision and plan for the painting. I need to bring a little more of the really light yellowy greens into, you know, this middle section of the painting. So that's really important to get that to pop now. So these are the colors that, if we get too carried away with, can cause trouble in the painting. But if we've set the table with the neutrals and the blue-greens and the reds, they're gonna just be wonderful, vibrant accents for the painting, really come alive. Look at that. It's very yellow, very chromatic, lots of color. Let's just sneak this in behind the tree line, just a little bit back there. See, where else would that show up? Right in here, right in here, maybe once more, just there. Let's just bring that layer. I like it having a strong horizontal impact up high in the composition. So let's make sure it's not wiggling too much. Good. Now I want to have a more ochre, golden version of this. I'll start with it pretty light in value, and then we'll work towards the midtones as well. So again, even right within this warm yellow green, we're shifting from the limey yellow green to the golden ochre. Same value, different color. Just creates more of that wonderful diversity of value and color. And while we do that, I'll vary my mark making techniques. There, look at that. That's already interesting. I need more dark in there. That's obvious right away now that we've brought the light in. But let's just let this golden ochre dance a little more around in the painting, and I'm going to get a slightly darker value version of the same thing. So let's grab a kind of raw sienna, or you know, that ochre, golden ochre, a little darker in the mid-tone. Now you'll begin to see the magical moment where the underpainting in red, instead of overwhelming the surface, will flicker through, and it'll be like this little sparkling quality. Pastels were made to be broken. They've, one of these blessed pastels has fulfilled its purpose in life. Isn't that great? See, I sneak that warm into the cool shadow just a little bit and let that get into the lit side of the tree as well. These trees need help. They're a little too sparse still. Okay, we are gonna hit the develop/refine phase with a quick painting like this. It's never gonna be terribly refined, but I'm gonna go back into my darks, pump them up a little bit, then the midtones and the lights, add some of those vibrant color accents. The last strategy that I like to use is what I like to say, quote, violets are a green's best friend. It's really true, as silly as it sounds. Violet is a friend of green. So I might bring some of that violet in. Violet is in the red family, but it's got that kind of, you know, it's not too powerful, and it always looks good with green. So let's jump back in as I address some of the darks. This is our typical green. I'm using chromium green, or sometimes people will say Kelly green. Just a little of it works great. A lot of it, not so great. See, I'm transitioning between the lime yellow into the shadow with that, just right in between, a little green accent. So, strong chromatic greens are great for accenting. We don't want to use piles and piles of them, but boy, they work really well for accenting. Let's push that right in where we want to pick up on that rice paddy tread line in the field. It's a foreground, maybe some foreground grass, nice and tall. Woo! I had a fatality. Actually, there's still half of this wonderful pastel. Things get a little exciting, and there are casualties during the painting process. All right, we're getting close here. Okay, I just took a step back. This is my refinement stage in this little 8x10. I'm going to bring back a little bit of the pink and red accenting in the trees. I'm going to play around on that lime green grass a bit and just make sure overall that I like the impact. We're really talking about the greens here. So one last shot. I feel like this looks a little clumsy, so I'm going to go back in with my orange of all colors, because I want to see a little sparkle in there. I want to see that come back with some sparkle on the light side. Maybe there's a trunk in there and it gets a little hit by the light. Now I can't go bananas with this color, but using it a little will be fun. I'm going to, let's just do one more on the far left with the orange right over here. Now I'm gonna switch over to a real pinkish red as well. Try to get it to scrub on there. I'm squinting my eyes and looking at the value transitions in the color. Just get a little bit of pink next to the yellows and greens. Scrub my finger to transition that value quietly. Don't want this to show up too bright on this layer. All right, back to that lime yellow, that yellow green. Let's come back in and clean up the accenting. Clean it up. I'm making sure that that horizontal makes sense. You can see this is even lighter and brighter than the last one I used. And just, actually I'm gonna use the slightly less bright yellow-green. I want that one to be the only bright one. So we're really careful with the values that we choose in our color. Very important. It creates a sense of depth as we control that value, and it creates a sense of light, certainly. We've got warm light in the field, and then the shadows are a bit cooler. A little sparkle here and there. This is my fussy part. I'm controlling the that shape. All right, one more look into the sky. Maybe a red violet. Maybe we just got to break up the color once. Here's an ultramarine violet, ultramarine blue. Let's let that in for a couple of sky holes here and there. A little bit at the top of this horizon. And up in the sky, I like that pink to blue. I actually feel like maybe just a bit of yellow. So I've got a creamy, this is not a strong yellow, a real tint of it. Lots of white in the yellow, but just creamy, and we just kind of squiggle that in. I'm gonna actually put it on and then drop a little aqua right back on top of it. A little in my water. Almost there. That's it. Yep. And then a light pink. So you see we're mixing turquoise, yellow, pink, and blue in the sky. The turquoise back on top. Sometimes just with the finger, drag it, we can create that grassy haze. I think this looks pretty good. I mean, for the sake of our goal of trying to vary the greens and understand how to deal with greens, I think we've done a nice job here in just understanding 4 strategies. Did you pick them up? I hope you did. Here they are. Number 1, use reds under the greens. So we used red in the underpainting. Number 2 was to vary your hue from warm to cool. So we used those warm yellowish greens all the way to those blue greens in the cool side. Number 3, vary the chroma. So we went vibrant with the accent greens, and then we went all the way down to neutral with those very neutralized grayish greens and grayish blue greens in the back horizon area. And then finally, we didn't do much of it in this painting because it's so orangey, but it's such a true principle, and there are paintings where this would come to life powerfully. Violets are a green's best friend. You use violet to break up the green, and often those mauves and violets are a fantastic way to integrate with green and keep it from being overbearing. There it is, 4 strategies for dealing with greens. Kermit the Frog would be proud of us, and I tell you what, it's your turn to try a green painting. If you like this video, I'd love for you to like it, subscribe to the channel, let all your friends know, share it so we can keep the conversation going. Maybe you have a great strategy that you use for dealing with greens and it's unique to what I was talking about. Would you leave that in the comment section below? We'd love to learn from one another. It's been fantastic to hear your comments and to learn from you. So go ahead, get your pastels out and paint a wonderful green-filled landscape. Have fun.